environmental sustainability in medical systems. But today I'm going to talk a little bit more about the technology and processes in place at Arvin Eye Care System, which is where I spent my Fulbright Nehru Fellowship studying their system of surgery. It's titled Telemedicine, but I'm not going to talk just about the telemedicine services. I'm going to talk a little bit more broadly about what Arvin's been doing to try to address inequality in eye care in India. So the prevalence of cataracts in particular in India is much higher than in other places in the world. There's a variety of reasons, sun exposure, a bunch of things, but basically there's a lot of people who need eye care in India, and unfortunately most of them do not have access or have not had access to care. So this is a huge problem, certainly not just in eye care, but eye care is one particular issue. So Arvin Eye Care System developed trying to address this inequality. The first clinic was opened in 1976 by Dr. V. It was an 11-bed facility in Madurai, in Tamil Nadu, and it grew rapidly from there. But their basic model was really intention, right? They were trying to provide care for people who can't necessarily pay for eye surgery. Cataract blindness is perfectly treatable, but most people would not be able to afford treatment, even if they knew where to access care. But developing an eye care system that would address that problem, that system also needs to be financially sustainable themselves. So this was the dynamic that Arvin was dealing with as a system when they first developed. So they really designed the whole system to bring in the non-customers, right? These people who maybe didn't know that care was available, or if they did, they had lots of reservations about it, or probably most likely couldn't actually pay for it. And so this is where they are today. So they have 5 tertiary care centers, 5 secondary care centers, which is where they do the cataract procedures, 6 community eye clinics, 61 primary care centers. And the interesting part here is the number of people that they're able to reach in the growth of their system. So 10,000 patients examined. This is like going to an optician, and getting your eyes tested for just basic things, so getting glasses. And from there, they do 1,500 surgeries each day. Most of those are cataracts. They have outreach camps, so they actually go out into the rural areas and recruit patients. And those are done in large camps, so they'll go out, see like 1,000 people a day, bring back the people who need surgeries, which is usually around 300 people. They're all transported together as a community. They're operated on in a single day. One day after the surgery, their vision is tested and they're sent back together as a community to where they came from. And then they're followed up 1 month later. A physician will go out there and then check up post-operative cases. They do a lot of training, so not just ophthalmologists as residents, but also surgical techs, and they actually hire a lot of local women to do some of the housekeeping and other chores, but they're highly trained professionals within the hospital. And then 1,600 teleconsultations, and that's every day, that they will have physicians in some of their tertiary, secondary clinics who are devoted to their telemedicine links to the eye clinics, and the patients can come into those clinics in rural areas and actually access physicians back at the primary centers in Madurai or Pondicherry, some of the bigger communities. So it's a really interesting system. The thing that I was there to look at was really their surgeries, and so one of the ways that they've reduced the cost of their procedures is to really focus on the process of care delivery. So they perform the procedures the same way that we would here in the States, using the same technologies. There's a machine called the phaco emulsifier, and that's used to actually remove the cataract. But they set up the surgical system a little bit differently. So this is the operating room. I don't know how many people know surgeries here, but this is not a typical operating room in the US. So here we have actually 2 physicians. There's 4 beds. Each physician has 2 beds, and one is being operated on while the other one is being prepped. The physician is only doing cut to close. They don't do any of the pre-op or post-op work. And in this way, Arvin's really cut their overhead time. They can cycle through patients very quickly and safely, I will add. So what we're looking at here, I watched one surgeon do about 40 surgeries in 4 hours. That's pretty fast. In the US, we're lucky if we get about 30 minutes per case. So they're able to access a lot more people much more quickly. In addition, one of the things that I was looking at as a sustainability specialist was their use of materials. So they reuse most of their items. So here you can see the drapes are all reusable, their gowns are reusable, and that really cuts their costs. So they're not spending as much per surgery. And in that way, they've been able to reduce the price of surgery to about $200 US a case. In the US, it's about $3,500 US a case. There's a few other things that they've been able to do. They branched out and formed a manufacturing unit to manufacture the intraocular lenses that replace your cataract. And so that's about 1/10 the cost of what they could buy internationally. And that brand, Oral Labs, now is, I think, about 10% of the international market. Basically, since its inception, it's grown because the cost is so low, but the quality is very good. The other thing that's really increased access to care for them, for our eye care system, is developing these community clinics where they have two of their highly trained ophthalmic professionals. These are again, women from the community who are trained at Arvind. And then two of them are stationed in a clinic, and they can do the regular checkups and those kinds of things. If a patient comes in post-operatively, they can check out and see if anything's wrong, and they'll consult with the physician. So here you can kind of see on the computer screen, there's a physician on that screen back at the main facility in Pondicherry. And if the professionals here notice anything wrong, they can consult with that physician. If the patient needs to come into Pondicherry, then they can arrange that transportation. But the patient doesn't have to go all the way into the main city, skip a whole day of work or whatever else, to receive treatment for eye care issues. And if it's something more simple, like they just need new prescriptions for their glasses, these women can administer that there. So it's a really interesting way to incorporate technology that's been really helping provide access to eye care in these communities. So this is some statistics on their surgeries. To date, this is from March 2016, they performed almost 6 million. And what you can see here, the top half are the paying customers, and the lower half, a little bit more than half, are the free customers. So all the patients who are receiving care without having to pay for it. And so the cool thing about Arvind's model is that they're profitable. So you can see a pretty big gap here between expenses and income. A third of their patients are not paying anything for their care. A fifth are highly subsidized, so they're paying a little bit but not below market rate. And then the paying patients, those are the ones paying the $200 for cataract surgery. And that actually makes the whole hospital profitable. And they need the volume of everyone to be able to provide the costs at such a low price market rate. And that's an interesting component. So the perspective for Arvind, their customer are really the non-customers, right? The people who most other healthcare systems have kind of ignored because they don't have a lot of money. The cost is crucial for Arvind because they need the cost to be low to be able to provide sustainable care to people who can't really afford it. And so they've developed Oral Labs manufacturing group and provided a lot of other opportunities to bring patients into. So the camps are one example of bringing them in as a community to give them eye care and taking them back. It's not just the price, right? But there's a lot of fear of going in to have surgery, and if you're doing it by yourself and you've maybe never left your community before, that is a big deal. And so they actually have developed those camps to recruit patients in an appropriate manner. Obviously, quality is integral. If you're trying to eliminate blindness, you're not going to do that very well if your quality is not there. They don't want to injure or harm patients in their care. So while the process is designed in a way that in the US we would be uncomfortable with, in terms of reusing all of these things or having multiple patients in one operating room, they have developed strict quality protocols so that safety is not compromised, and that's crucial. Competition is an interesting one for Arvind. So they train a lot of ophthalmologists for India, and they actually do a lot of global outreach as well. They want their model to spread as much as possible. They want to compete with other people. One, because so many people need eye care. It's just, if their mission is to eradicate blindness, they need as many people to do these kinds of things as possible. But two, it also helps Arvind develop their system, keep developing, keep improving. If they're able to share their model and learn about some weaknesses, they can improve that one too. So it's continuous improvement, and we do that through competition. And the mindset, I think, overall, the culture at Arvind is really about improving eye care, and every employee knows that. That they're not sidetracked by finances or other things that a lot of other medical institutions could be. That their goal is really eradication of blindness. So those are some of the big things. So again, almost 2/3 of need both of those to be able to afford this kind of care. You need the volume of the unpaying patients to make cataract surgery only $200 a case for the paying patients, and you need the paying patients to be able to pay for the free patients. So it's a very interesting model. Just leave you with a quote from Dr. B. Intelligence and capabilities are not enough. There must be the joy of doing something beautiful. I enjoyed working with Arvin quite a bit. I was there to look at the material use and basically the carbon footprint of the care, which is much lower than it is here in the US. And it's a really amazing system, and I really enjoy working with it. But this was hand over now and take questions.
Take questions after your
So, one of the most fascinating talks I've heard in my life was the commencement speech of Steve Jobs, where he gave 3 stories. And I've listened to that talk about 100 times in my life. And ever since that, I've given several talks saying the compilation of 3 stories. And this is actually a talk about a compilation of 3 completely different things. One, I'm going to talk to you about dengue. Second, I'm going to talk to you about handbags. And 3, I'm going to talk to you about onion prices. And you'd be wondering, why the heck am I standing here and talking to you about dengue, handbags, and onion prices? And what does that have to do with data or development? Okay. Now, before that, it's fascinating to hear about Arvind, and I wanted to share a couple of my own stories. I actually had the privilege of working with Arvind climbing up towers, installing their first telemedicine system in 2005, 2006. And the picture that you saw was the rural clinic. We had put up some of the first rural clinics back in 2005. And by 2008, we stopped working with them because they figured out, what we were doing was not rocket science and they could do it by themselves. So we essentially gave it off and they took it off and essentially scaled it up in a big way. And I also had the opportunity to work with them on building a diabetic retinopathy system. And I was never good enough to meet their quality. I got it to about 92% accuracy, 93% accuracy, and then they'll still come back and say, no, for these 7 cases, it still doesn't work. So that was one case where what we tried to do was did not go all the way. So back to my 3 stories. The first story is about dengue surveillance in Pakistan. And if you go back in 2011, there was a massive outbreak in Pakistan of a dengue fever outbreak. And if people know about dengue, it affects about 95 million people around the world every year. And this particular outbreak was sort of peculiar in Pakistan because, thanks to climate change, Pakistan is getting more humid, and during actual rainy seasons, they start seeing more tropical weather, and there was a massive epidemic at a very large scale. And the country wanted to do something, right? And one of my collaborators was Umar Saif, who's also both an academic and sort of the right hand of the Chief Minister of Punjab. So he could basically do a lot of things that people like me could not do. So what did they do? They set up a health hotline, right? So people who got dengue wanted to know which was the hospital that had bed availability, right? And what started as a health hotline then became a sort of an advisory service. Do I have something like dengue? Should I go to the hospital? Should I go see the doctor? So they were able to reduce traffic just by setting up a hotline and getting people to call. Now, if I live in Greenwich Village or if I live in Chelsea, right, and suddenly if 3 people, not 1, not 2, but 3 people call today, right? 1 is sort of an aberration, 2 can be an error, but if 3 people are calling from Chelsea on a single day, that actually gives you a pretty strong signal that maybe there is an epidemic happening. So we got a full detailed map of where people call from. And suddenly, we could predict dengue outbreaks 2 weeks before they happen, 3 weeks before they happen. We could predict, just based on calling patterns, the intensity of the disease at a very high granularity. And this system has received over 300,000, 400,000 calls. And what this led to was a very accurate dengue forecasting system, where we could use the calling pattern, weather data, and we also use something called as awareness campaign. Not as a positive signal, as a negative signal. Because the day there is an ad on TV, more people call. So you need to kind of contain that. So then we built some machine learning algorithms, or what you may call them. And we could essentially predict outbreaks at a town-wise granularity 2 weeks before they happen. So this was a recent paper we wrote in Science Advances. And as an impact of that, what's happened is that this feeds back into a system which essentially goes as a dashboard to 200 hospitals, and that empowers 2,700 health workers to go and do containment activities. And over the last 4 years, there have been 1.3 million containment activities. And we're trying to write a follow-up paper saying, out of 7 standard dengue containment activities, 3 have had a very positive effect in reducing the number of deaths. So this is sort of story number 1. And as part of this, they use a mobile phone and they also take a picture. And what's powerful about that is these days phones have GPS, so you can actually time tag and location tag them. So it's actually verifiable evidence that they actually went to that place and did something. So the whole system also has a feedback loop. And this is actually one of the largest dengue surveillance systems, I would say, running in the world right now. And since this work, it's sort of, and I take least credit for it because Umar did most of the job here. And ever since this, we have been getting dragged into Zika surveillance in basically every South American country right now. So this is story number 1. Story number 2 is something totally different. It's on microscopy, corruption, and counterfeiters. Again, it's about data and development. What people don't realize is that when you go to Chinatown and you go buy those handbags, the counterfeit handbags, right? Counterfeit goods is the #1 sponsor for both terror and child labor. #1, right? And in India, paper-based transactions, right? There was a demonetization effort to change currencies and so on. But way before that, there was something called as the Telemedicine scam, which was about a $10 billion scam, where somebody called Thiel was actually making fake stamp paper for several years. Right? So the question really came down to, can we detect fake documents? Can we detect fake stamp papers? Can we detect counterfeit goods in a very simple way? And this led to the development of, and counterfeit goods is like as big as a $1.5 trillion worldwide problem, encompassing 5 to 7% of world trade for commodity goods. Right? So I told you about the Thiel scam. But in the handbag case, for example, right? If you go to eBay, 75% of what's sold on eBay for top brands like Louis Vuitton is fake. So eBay had to pay 63 million in damages to Louis Vuitton. Right? Now, I don't know whether this video will work, but let me skip this. What this led to was the development of a very simple authentication system. Let me try to see if this video plays. So what you see here is a little microscope that can sort of look at microscopic textures of an object at a 300x magnification. And you can pick a brand. And what we've done as a company right now is we've learned microscopic texture patterns of the top 20 brands across the last 50 years. Right? So I know what it means to be Louis Vuitton, what it means to be Chanel, what it means to be Hermes, right? And a lot of other brands that I never knew in my life, including Givenchy, YSL, Bottega Veneta, Balenciaga, and so on, right? But really, we are at a particular point where we are essentially trying to enforce this sort of as a global standard of how you authenticate any physical good, right? Now, what you see here is sort of like an authentic Louis Vuitton on the left and a fake Louis Vuitton on the right at a 300x magnification. And the texture pattern of how they print something at a very small granularity is very different. And I'm showing you rather small pictures, but when we actually capture it, it's like this big. And to actually develop it, we wanted to solve the problem of corruption. We had to learn microscopy. We started manufacturing our own microscopes. Then we had to do deep learning systems to do machine learning on top of these textures. Then we had to do new types of computer vision algorithms. So it led me into a journey to work on a set of problems that I had no clue of how to even approach them. Right? So the best way I describe myself is I do computing for development. I don't know what I'm going to work on. The problem is more important, and we'll figure it out on the way. Right? So that's story number 2. Story number 3 has to do with onion prices. And it has an interesting connection to news and politics. Okay, I know some of you are from politics here. Right? Now, why onion prices? Right? This is a picture of onion price fluctuations in India over basically the last 7 to 8 years. Right? And what you see here is onion can fluctuate by a factor 6 over 2 months. Factor 6. You buy onions for $2. 6 weeks later, it's $12, right? And when you multiply that by purchasing power parity of 6.6 between US and India, the relative cost at which that price spike is actually huge, especially on on poorer populations, right? So onion price is a single variable that is very closely related with political events. Governments going down, right, has a very strong relationship with onions. It's a vegetable that is used in a lot of Indian dishes, but is not government controlled. So the market price is actually the true price in some sense. Right? Now, why does this happen? You might ask. What triggers onion prices? So this embarked on a journey on natural language processing where we started looking at 10 years of newspapers to understand, can we understand onion prices? Right? So if you look at signals from news, right, there are a lot of signals of a potential price fluctuation that happens 1 week before, 2 weeks before, 1 day before, and so on, right? And sometimes it happens after the event, right? So can I look at events that happen in news and understand why prices fluctuate? So these are some examples of articles that came before or right after onion prices. And you can actually see that there are interesting relationships with trucker strike, other vegetables. There's a relationship with rain. There's a relationship with export-import, and so on, right? And the last one is export-import policy, right? So what we ended up doing was we built a mammoth system where on one side you have news articles, on another side you have structured data, which is just a table, right? So we look at news articles and we look at price fluctuations, right? And we try to use natural language processing to extract events and how events are related. And we're trying to understand how they relate to each other in a concise manner and extract knowledge graphs. But in some sense, I also want to build a predictive model of what triggers this fluctuation. So this resulted in a publication in KDD, Data Mining Conference. So let's take an article like this one. Surat farmers protest against expressway, right? Now, if you look at the word protest, right, it's a verb that's representative that something interesting is happening, right? And there are subsidiary triggers, which are things that appear further down, where somebody is threatened, somebody is trying to construct something, right? So what we look at is we analyze, semantically what these mean, right? And we also extract location tags, right? And we also extract temporal tags, when was the article published and so on, right? And we apply these in some topic modeling approaches, right? If you don't understand topic modeling, don't worry for a second. The key that I'm trying to get at is we are able to understand what are event classes, which are a group of words that refer to something similar. So on the fly, we are able to relate that strike, hunger strike, agitation, dharna, gherav, which are like Hindi words, which are synonymous, blockade, right? And we can associate them with entities like students. Students are typically the ones who protest first. And there are farmers and price hike and a whole bunch of other factors, right? Now, what have I done? I basically looked at 10 years of news. I've looked at, let's say, protest as a variable, right? And I've extracted a temporal map of protest, right? I could have extracted this for Donald Trump. I could have extracted this for something else, right? Now, does this relate to onion prices? You can relate the two, right? If you see a spike in one, do you see a spike in the other? Before, after? You can do a whole bunch of. I've converted English text to some mathematical vectors that I can do some magic on, right? So the end result of all this is I can learn this condensed graph, right? What does this graph mean? So across 10 years, we're able to say there are 6 classes of events that have the highest impact on onion prices. Strikes, right? If somebody organizes a strike on the highway, the transportation of onions into the city is blocked, right? Price rise of fuels and certain goods. Of course, it again affects transportation. Festivals, celebrations, that's a supply variable. People want more food. Natural disasters like drought, rain, excessive rain, or earthquakes, or other types of factors. Government policies, typically export, import, those kind of policies, right? And political scams happens to be an interesting variable. I mean, I'm not looking for the word political scam. I happen to group a whole bunch of words, and when I go back and look at those words, they all refer to words that refer to a political scam. So these are like manually annotated labels that I gave them, right? So if I have to summarize what are the 6 most important factors that trigger onion prices, this is what I learned from Indian news, right? So what we're trying to do right now is going back to each spike, and we're trying to explain the types of things that happened before each massive spike. Okay? So with that, I'll stop my talk. But the main takeaway from my talk is data is powerful. You can do crazy stuff with data if you have the right access to the right data. And you can, I don't want to relate apples and oranges, but really there are many cases where there are different shades of apple. It's just that we don't know that there are different shades of apple. And if you dig deep enough, there are enough opportunities where you can use data in a very powerful way for socioeconomic development. So with that, I'll stop here and we'll move on to that. Thanks.
All right, thank you for those fascinating talks. So we'll open the floor for questions. Please. Yeah.